Hi guys, it's Jamie from Zero, and today we're going to be going through Centric Minds metadata. Now, this is just a quick conceptual overview. Metadata is quite a broad topic, and there are much more specific videos you'll see linked on later in the post. But for now, we really want to give a screencast on this issue because metadata is probably the single most important part of building a solid Centric Minds installation. But at the same time, it's probably the issue that most users have trouble grappling with at the start. So I guess we'll start off and just answer what is metadata? And if you've asked this question before, you'll probably have heard something along the lines of, metadata is data about data, or it's data describing data. And whilst that's a nice explanation, it doesn't really give a good concept of what it is or how it works. So I think we're going to use a real life example of how metadata has been implemented very, very effectively. And I will kind of show you the concepts behind it and how this sort of reaches these solutions. So Twitter hashtags. And we have a look here, we've got a list of tweets that have come up. And you can see up here, I've just done a search for hashtag puppy. Now, whenever you write a tweet, or if you've never used Twitter before, that's a quick overview of Twitter as well. You see, you write a tweet and you write some information, and you post a picture or two up, and then you define what the tweet is about and use that by using a hashtag. We have a look here at Leonardo. You can see here that part of his tweet was this hashtag puppy. And what he essentially said to the world is that this post or this tweet is about puppies. We can sort of scroll down and we can see that every person in this list will now have puppy against their tweets. So what this has done is it's taken information that's been posted up. In this case, it looks like there's a little piece of text and a link and probably some pictures as well. But it's also managed to quickly and intuitively group an entire class or entire subsection of the Twitter community into a section called puppy. And conceptually, that can kind of be seen this way. If you've ever done high school mathematics, yes, we're going to be using Venn diagrams. So what happens is this grey rectangle represents the tweet ecosphere. And in that ecosphere, there's probably, 10 billion or more tweets. So how do we sort of filter this data out? How do we make any sense of it? And the way that they've done that is by using hashtags. But what hashtags have done conceptually is actually created this group here called puppies in amongst the entire ecosystem. So when you look at tweets, you're not really looking for a particular tweet. What you're looking for a group or an entire section of the Twitter community that gives you an idea of tweets. And that, at its most basic level, is what metadata is. So when people say it's data that's describing data, in this case, I'll go back to Twitter. In this case, the hashtag of puppy is a piece of data that is describing all of these tweets in this list. And we'll see it keeps loading up and it keeps going on. So we'll go back to Centric Minds. And Centric Minds uses the exact same concept for implementing data. What it does is we ask users to really think about all the information they're putting into the system and to begin to develop these conceptual groups in their heads. And we'll kind of go through why. So you can see here that metadata lives under the content section. We'll just jump into here. And on the side, you get taken. And you get taken into the main repository. On the side, there are these 4 sort of elements here. Now, it automatically defaults you to meta plates. And meta plates is it's kind of a Centric Minds name for metadata templates. So below that is elements. If we go into elements, elements are the groups that we saw. So Twitter uses hashtags. We use elements. If you've used a system like Drupal, it uses groups as well. So they're all different names, but they're all the same thing. Each of these pieces of information describes the document or the data that's attached to and gives it some sort of clarification, some structure. We have element schemes, which are quite advanced. We won't be going into that in this tutorial. We also have thesauri or thesaurus. Now, thesaurus can be thought of as just a list, But once again, there's a dedicated screencast to that, given the complexity and I guess the breadth of the way that Centric Minds implements that sort of solution. So we'll go back to elements, and we can see here that there's, I don't know, maybe 25 or so different elements in this group. And we can go through and we can add new elements and modify and delete them. But I guess how this relates to files and other documents in the system is probably more important. So I've navigated to the file repository, and I'm just going to choose any random document, in this case, control documents. And I'm going to go look at this document's details. You can see here it's loaded up, I guess, the information pane or the information facet for this document. Now you can see here that there's this option that says metadata, and if I use this is going to load me up a modal that will show each of the metadata elements I have attached to this document. So we'll just click this. And in this modal window that's popped up, you can see that each of these elements has a value. And you can see that in this case we have a keyword of property, and we have a piece of metadata of this author, and that lets us know who's created the document, which is John Lane, and when it was created and by who. And these sorts of things, and what this lets us do is it lets us begin to build a picture about this document. We can think, okay, we know roughly where this document lives. And when I say lives, we know what it belongs to, what section and subsection it belongs to. And I'll go back to Twitter and I'll show you how this becomes more advanced and more useful. We can see here that Timberland has posted up 2 pieces of information about this particular picture. So he's got a picture up. There it looks like there's a dog or a cat. I'm assuming it's a puppy on those boots, and there's a link. But you'll see that not only does he have the puppy hashtag, he also has the Timberland hashtag on this tweet. So if we go back to what we said before, what he really has now is 2 groups. If we scroll down in Glyphy, this is an example of how the groups might look. So in that particular tweet example, one of these would say puppy and one would say Timberland. But in my example, I've used probably a more corporate setting, because I hear that we have different groups and they intersect. And what will happen is you'll find that each file that you produce will belong to multiple groups. So if, for example, we had a file that was part of a company project called Zero, maybe it was a tracking of customer complaints, and maybe it was also specifically related to customer complaints against your employees. So human resources would need to be involved in this too. And we can see here that each of these groups intersect, but right in the middle is where that file would live, and it would have these 3 pieces of metadata against it. So in Twitter terms, it would have these 3 hashtags, and in Centric Minds terms, it would have these 3 elements against it. And if we just go back to Centric Minds, we'll go back into the file repository, and we'll have a look at this document again. We can see that each of these elements here would be one of these groups here. So there's no limit to the amount of groups you can get in the system. You can kind of expand this out and have, if you want 900 groups for a file, it doesn't matter. But what this does do is it gives a very clear picture of how this file should be viewed and should be treated. So we're just going back into the metadata section now. And remember, the elements is the Centric Mind names for information groups. And we can go through and we can add in these groups as quickly as we want. Now we're going to have a look at metadata templates. Metadata templates has its own screencast, and that follows this one. But essentially what you'll find is that as you start to use the system more and more, you won't be using one piece of metadata for a file. So if we go back into here, you can see that in this case, there are 3 possible metadata elements or metadata groupings. And what metadata templates allow you to do, and we've called metadata templates metaplates, is it lets you automatically assign a batch group of elements to apply to a file. So in this case, we could create a metaplate. And let's have a look at these. Create a metaplate that says, project 0. And that would have information about the project, information about the file type you're uploading, whether or not it was a complaint or a compliment. Does it relate to human resources or maybe finance? And these sorts of things. And this way, instead of having to go through this elements list and manually select one of these 25 elements, we can go through the metaplates list, and we'll have a look at any of these. Let's have a look at this document metadata. And we see that these two metadata groupings, so department and document type, have already been selected. Now, just for reference, this is a demo environment, and we can see here that it has about 25 elements on it. Most clients with a good structured metadata system will have upwards of 200 to, you can go away. One client that we've done had over 450 elements, and it seems like a lot. So if metadata templates seem like overkill at the start, just remember that what you're looking at now is a tiny fraction of how complex your system will become as you really define your information properly. All right, well, I hope you understand the concept of metadata, and go through and have a look at the other screencasts on these. They're linked in the bottom of this post, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.